Hi, everyone. So, today I'm going to start to talk about aging because the more and more that I see myself in these videos, the more and more I could see I'm getting old. So, getting old is inevitable, and it's funny because as a kid, you don't ever want to be like your parents. I know that anything that my mother did well, I didn't want to do. I didn't want to be a good cook. I didn't want to know how to sew outfits. I didn't want to know how to be the best housekeeper. All the things that she wanted me to learn, I learned because I had to. But then when I became independent and on my own, I stepped away from all of that. So it wasn't until later that I realized the benefit of being a good cook and feeding your family and cooking with love. But you don't want to be your mom, you don't want to be your dad. But more and more, I look in the mirror, and the person I see looking back is my mother. Like, I look exactly like my mother. She didn't have the blue hair, but I can tell you that if you see a picture of her um, in her older age and me now, twins. So I wanted to start that way because the incident in Uvalde, Texas, meant that those children will never age. They'll never go through the experiences that we went through. They never will have the opportunity to say, I don't want to be like you. I want to be different. And then come to the realization that, guess what? Being just like them is not a bad thing. But in having this conversation, I may piss some people off. I may say things that someone doesn't want to hear. In fact, just getting here and sitting uh, caused me to forget about my Pellegrino. And you know that I always have that Pellegrino with me. So I want to talk about what happened and why it happened. Um, in Texas, there is an open carry. So you can, as long as you own a gun, you can carry it around. You don't need to have a license. You don't need to have taken classes. You don't need to basically do anything. Think of the cowboy movies we used to see when we were younger. So that's how Texas is. Think about a place where an 18-year-old can go and buy an assault rifle. No questions asked. You don't have to say your name. You don't have to register the gun. You have the money, you take it, you buy it, you take it home, and you could use it in any way, shape, or form that you want. So people in Texas, we call it the new Wild Wild West. I don't live in Texas, but close enough. We're in Florida, where our governor wants to institute the same kind of policy. Right now, you can carry a gun if you have a concealed carry permit, which means you have to apply for it, you have to give your information, and all of that. So, and then it has to be concealed, not so you can't carry it in the open as in Texas. So we saw the story unfold, and we see today different things come up. So first we heard that there was an officer that engaged and that officer was shot in the head. Then now we hear no, that didn't happen. There was nobody there. We heard that there was border patrol, a whole battalion there, and that they came to help. And then we heard that there were police officers and other personnel who came to get their kids from the school when they heard that there was an active shooter. And then we heard that the police didn't engage until almost an hour later. And so I've been keeping up with the news, and I did see that it said that once this young man shot back, that then they waited almost an hour for SWAT and teams with body armors to come and help them. So that part of it is not a lie. That part of it is true. which is strange because in the Buffalo shooting, we had the security guard who was a retired police officer immediately engaged. He didn't say, "Wait a minute, I have to call the police department and they have to send the SWAT team and they have to come and bring me a bulletproof vest." So he gave up his life trying to save the people is basically what I'm saying. And in this case, there were multiple police officers who hid once the young man started shooting, which says to me, well, why if there's a multitude of them, and I'm just speculating because I wasn't there and I don't know how it played out, but why didn't they engage? And how come police in Texas don't have bulletproof vests? So don't they have rifles in their car? I know in New York they have rifles that they could pull out, and they have vests and things to use. So we have about 20 children, there are 2 teachers killed, murdered. We have close to 17 people wounded that were hit by bullets. And you begin to wonder if they had engaged earlier, if they engaged immediately. So I was listening to someone give the timeline, and he was seen by the funeral parlor getting out of his car, and then he shot at them. Did they call the police right away? If you have a gun, why didn't you shoot back at him? So many things, but the point is that these lives were lost needlessly. These are lives of children that had their full future, all their potential taken away. In cases like this, you think of who did they kill there that could have been the next Albert Einstein, the next Madame Curie, the next president, the next person who solves, finds a cure for cancer or finds a cure for our dependency on gas. All of these things, this entire group of children just murdered, wiped out, and the potential for what they could do taken away with them. Then, interestingly enough, the governor said in a press conference that there was no history of mental illness on the part of the shooter. Then he said something about how they're going to do mental health, more mental health in the schools. And people are now talking about more armed guards in the school. And so if you had all these armed officers that responded and they waited a full hour, because that's what the police officer that was giving the timeline say, then what's going to happen when you have armed police in there? So they say, they use the talking point, the solution to a bad man with a gun is a good man with a gun. In cases like this, there's no good or bad, guns. You can't say the guns are good or bad. But if people don't know how to use the guns correctly, that is the problem. So I think that we as a society have let this go on too far. I think we've let Congress hold us hostage, and that we don't demand from our Congress people more gun control. And yes, you'll hear it, oh, that's not going to help. People still have access to guns. In fact, at the press conference, they said, oh, look at New York and Chicago. They have stricter gun laws, and look at all the people that are killed there. That is true. But you never hear of school shootings in New York since, and I grew up there my entire life. I haven't heard of a school shooting in Chicago. So why is it that places that do have stricter laws don't have the school shooting, and places that are lenient, where anybody could get a gun at this point, have these school shootings? And where you have armed officers, because in New York City, there are no armed officers in the schools. So places that have an armed officer, like this school, it didn't do any good. So I'm saying, if we had gun control, where if you buy a gun, it has to be registered. There is a ban on assault rifles, because why do regular Joe Schmoes or female Janes need an assault rifle? If you're in the service, I understand you're using it. if you are, I don't even know, like even in civilian police, when would you use that? But everyday people should not have access to buying an assault rifle. So if we begin with those two pieces of legislation, that all guns must be registered and no civilian can buy an assault rifle or an assault like weapon, I think that would eliminate some of this. Because then they'll come in, and what about body armor too? You know, what is the a regular civilian need body armor for? So we have to really think through the ideas that we're given. We have to think through the answers that our politicians give us back. I heard an interview with Ted Cruz. It was, I believe, from England, a reporter asking him what is happening. And then he says, oh, you can't politicize this, because they asked, why aren't you doing more gun reform? And all of a sudden, that question led to him saying, now you're politicizing. None of the ideas that the Democrats have come up with would have stopped this. No, but at least we do know that had there been a ban on assault rifles, he would not have had access to an assault rifle. And so he got mad and even left the interview process and refused to answer. So, we get outraged, we get sad, we say, oh my God, how could this happen? And then we do nothing. If you do one thing, call your Congress people, contact them, and let them know, I am in favor of gun registration. I am in favor of a ban on assault rifles, and people under a certain age should not have any guns, access to guns. So think about it. Think about the lives that were lost recently, the ones in Buffalo, the ones in Uvalde, and think about the next time it's going to happen, because this is what happens. We've forgotten about the Buffalo people now. All of a sudden, now we're focusing on what happened in Texas. And then the next shooting will happen, and we'll focus on that. And we'll be saying how terrible this is, the loss of lives, children. If we don't take care of our children, who will? If as a society we don't put things in place to protect them, who is going to do that? And when our politicians don't, that's where I say we need term limits, because politicians like Mitch McConnell, all of them, even Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, nobody should have a job guaranteed for life. If you are not producing what your constituents want, and it's said that 90% of Americans want some kind of gun reform, let's hold them accountable. And if you don't hold them accountable now, hold them accountable at the voting booth. Vote them out, and vote the people that say that they want it. That's it for today. So it's been aging, leading to the murder of children and the two teachers. Be safe, be well, and next time I'll try to remember my Pellegrino.